You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff Garvin.
And I'm Dan Zarzana.
Let the journey begin. Are you ready for some football? Have fun syncing that, by the way.
Hey, Jeff, though we are still dealing with triple-digit temperatures on the west coast of the United States, the American football fans across the country are preparing for the kickoff of the 103rd season of the National Football League. As a matter of fact, this is week 1, and my hometown has already lost.
There are more football films out there than we realized, so choosing just 3 was quite a challenge. We argued. We called each other's names. We insulted each other's mamas. Ultimately, we agreed on a theme, and the poll results are as follows. In third place with 18% of the vote, we are Marshall. The runner-up is Rudy with 35% of the vote. There were some serious Rudy fans in the comments.
Yes.
And the winner with 47% of the vote, Remember the Titans.
Disney's Remember the Titans was released September 29th, 2000. At number 1, a position it enjoyed only briefly when Meet the Parents knocked it to second place the following week. Remember the Titans was a box office success, however, earning $136.7 million worldwide against its $30 million budget, which prevented September 2000 from being one of the poorest performing months in box office history. To help illustrate that point, Remember the Titans was released with just 2 days left in the month and ended up being the month's top performer with its $20 million opening weekend. September 2000 was abysmal.
Wow.
At the box office.
Directed by Boz Yakin, Remember the Titans is one of just 2 films he's directed that he did not also write. The script was penned by Gregory Allen Howard, and this was his first produced screenplay. What a way to come out of the screenplay gate, man. Your first produced screenplay is Remember the effing Titans? Boom. The film stars Denzel Washington as Corch.
Corch.
That's Human Burn.
He took Yost Gerb.
The film stars Denzel Washington as Coach Herman Boone, Will Patton as Coach Bill Yost.
Oh, I see. You're doing the sibilant thing
Bill
that
Yost.
Will Patton does. All right.
Wood Harris as Julius Campbell, and Ryan Hurst as Gary Bertier. Those are the 4 primary performers, but there are a bunch of other familiar faces in this film, like Donald Faison, Ethan Suplee, Hayden Panettiere, Kate Bosworth, and Ryan Gosling.
This is another ensemble cast.
Stars of the 2000s coming out.
Not just about football, Remember the Titans is based on the true story of Alexandria City, Virginia's first racially integrated high school and the resulting struggles of the students and community. It's also our second consecutive episode featuring French bread. Now let me ask you something, Mr. Garvin. How analytical are you?
I'm too analytical.
What?
I'm too analytical. I want to get the ordeal right.
Oh, I want to get the ordeal right.
I want to get the ordeal right.
I want to get the ordeal right. You all want to get the ordeal right?
Lace up your cleats. Let's hit the field. This is the hero's journey of Remember the Titans.
Act 1 of the hero's journey begins with the world of Common Day, where we see our main character in their status quo normal life. Jeff.
Yeah.
It took me so long to do this analysis.
Oh, really?
This film is chunky. Lot.
God, so much happens.
A lot happens in a relatively short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Every minute, there's like a new thing that I have to note.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Okay, so our film starts. Autumn leaves falling, a cemetery, and people dressed in black arriving by automobile. And I'm like, oh, okay, here's a somber way to start this movie. I see the autumn leaves, and I'm like, okay, yeah, autumn, fall, football, sure, those go together. And then there's a cemetery. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to go well. We hear a woman's voice, we later come to understand, belonging to Cheryl Yost. The adult Cheryl Yost is played by an uncredited Tess Panzer. She tells us that in Virginia, high school football is a way of life. It's bigger than Christmas. And in an exposition dump, Cheryl continues to explain that before 1971 in Alexandria, there was no race mixing. But in 1971, the school board combined the white school and the black school into one single integrated school called T.C. Williams High School. A little bit more about T.C. Williams in the bonus audio content. That summer, a black teenager was killed by a white store owner, and the city was on the verge of exploding. And while she's explaining this, we're starting to see scenes of a protest. Black people on one side of the street, white people on the other side of the street, barricade of police in the middle trying to keep them both apart. We are now introduced to Cheryl Yost, again, this time in her spirited child form, played by a 9-year-old Hayden Panettiere.
Oh, come on, Kirk, don't let Ray back you down like that. You're twice his size. Oh, what are they doing? If they keep on playing like that, we'll lose every game.
Well, I didn't think that was so bad.
She is fantastic in this movie.
She is.
Just an instant star.
And who by this time already had several screen credits on her resume, including the 1998 Pixar film A Bug's Life, in which she played Dot. Cheryl is loudly criticizing her father's football team's practice. Her father, Coach Yost, played by Will Patton. All-American lineman Gary Bertier, played by Ryan Hurst, approaches Coach Yost and expresses concern about some of the starting players losing their positions to the incoming black players. Then, Alan Bosley, who was actually a fictional character created for this film, played by Ryan Gosling, who is not a fictional person, tells the team that there is a disturbance at the store where the black teenager was shot by the white clerk, and the team of white players then runs down the street to get involved. Coach Yost pursues them in his pickup truck, blocks their path, and says, if you boys ever want to play for me again, you'll get in the truck. So Coach Yost is trying to protect these boys from getting involved in a potentially violent situation. So cut to Coach Yost now leading those players into his office to cool their heads, where they encounter Coach Herman Boone, played by Denzel Washington. In response to some baiting by a clearly racist Coach Tyrell, played by Brett Rice, Boone explains that he's not outside participating in the race riot because he's here for a scheduled appointment with Coach Yost, and he never misses an appointment.
Coach Boone, the school board made the decision to put you on my staff. I did not hire you.
Well, I came up here to coach at GW. I didn't ask the schools to redistrict. I didn't ask to be assigned to your staff, so I guess we're both in a situation we don't want to be in. But I can guarantee you this, Coach. I come to win.
I just want to say, like, Will Patton is one of my favorite character actors. He is fascinating. It's such great casting for this role, too.
You spelled tyranny wrong.
What is that from?
The Postman.
Oh, God.
Will Patton plays the big bad guy in The Postman.
Oh, man.
Finally, we see the Boones moving into their new house as the neighbors peer out at them from their own homes. And you hear this voiceover, all this like racist stuff. It only takes one, and then we'll be overrun with them. Wow.
Yeah.
That was the end of the World of Common Day for me.
Yeah, so you're into my approach to the inmost cave. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I agree. I agree.
Don't do this. You're overcooking my grits, Jeff.
That's what it is. Overcook your grits. Call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders them unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. The call comes in an interesting way. And in fact, it's worth talking about Herman Boone as the hero, because we haven't really actually called out the name of the hero. I was watching this film, and like many sports films and many ensemble cast films, you see many of the characters change meaningfully and have an arc over the story. Many of the characters have their own very definable hero's journey. And in fact, of the characters in this film, Herman Boone changes the least. He maintains his values and his courage throughout the film. Vogler unpacks different types of heroes in his book, The Writer's Journey, and there's one archetype called the catalyst hero, who comes in and changes everyone around him and changes the world for the better, but he himself does not have a transformative experience.
Right.
Well, Herman Boone does see things differently, and he changes his attitudes about certain things to the film. Boone's primary function as hero is to change those around him and to change his community. It's interesting how some of these portions of the journey unfold because we see them happen to other characters, even though we're following Boone as he's the viewpoint of this film. The call is Herman Boone, the new coach from out of town, being tapped to be the new lead coach, the head coach of the football team, to replace Yost and unseat him as a black man coming into a newly integrated school. But we don't see the typical scene where someone comes to his door and says, hey, you're the guy now. We cut into the middle of that scene. First, we see Yost being told he's being replaced. So we find out the change that's happening from the perspective of Yost's experience.
The school board has decided that Negro Herman Boone is going to be the head coach at TC.
It's not fair. My daddy's head coach. This is going to be his Hall of Fame.
And no one is trying to take away your daddy's future place in the hall.
You can't just walk in here and take my daddy's job away.
Then we cut to the Boone's porch, and Herman Boone is sitting there with Dr. Ferdinand Day from the school board. He's the only African-American member of the school board. Ostensibly, he's already told Coach Boone what's going to happen because Boone is already arguing with him. Dr. Day says to Herman Boone, you marched with Dr. King, you stood toe-to-toe with the Klan, you're a race man. Black folks have never had anything in this city to call their own except humiliation and despair. He is calling Herman Boone to a higher calling. You're not just a football coach. You're going to be this other big thing. And this is where we get Herman Boone's hero's journey transformation. He just does what he does in this film. He's just a football coach, but he has to own that bigger transformative experience. After Dr. Day's appeal, a crowd shows up outside Herman's house. It looks as though the entire black community of Alexandria has showed up, and they are clapping for him. They are surrounding him. They are chanting his name. They want him as their champion. That is part of his call, seeing the community show up at his house to call him to this higher purpose. So that's what I saw as the call to adventure.
I agree. A lot of what you just said there at the end is part of supernatural aid from my perspective. But before we talk about that, we have to talk about the refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, the call to adventure is refused, either directly by the hero. Sometimes external forces push the hero back. So the first little moment of refusal is Cheryl screaming at mysterious white man, saying, you can't take my daddy's job away, and then kicking him.
Yes.
Coach Boone tells Dr. Day,
I left North Carolina because I was passed over for a job that I had rightfully earned. Gave it to a white coach down there, couldn't even tie up his own football cleats. Now you are asking me to do the same thing to this man? I can't do that.
Yeah, such integrity this guy has. Immediately you're like, wow.
You mentioned earlier how other characters have their own journeys. I see a moment of refusal for Coach Yost, where he is meeting with the white players and their parents at Hal's Bar and Restaurant, informing them that he's taking a year off, then he's going to move to Loudoun and be their head coach. He's not going to stay here in Alexandria.
It's interesting because Coach Yost's call is, are you going to stay here and protect your boys and swallow the ego hit and be here for your boys? And as for much as he says he wants, he's all about the boys. At first, he's not. He's not going to work under Coach Herman Boone.
Right.
I consider the scene where Boone goes to Yost's house. After they've both found out, Coach Boone goes to Yost's house, and right away, Yost has set himself apart from the hardcore racists in this town, because at the very least, he treats Coach Boone like a human being. His beef with Herman isn't that he's black, it's that he's taking his job. And so surely some of his prejudices come to the surface during this film, but from the beginning, we like Coach Yost. He's clearly a good guy in a bad situation. Coach Boone says, hey, why don't you stay, be my assistant coach? And Yost refuses. That's Yost's refusal from within. And it's refusal from without for Boone, who's not getting the nice smooth ramp that he wants to make this job easier.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to meeting with the mentor, supernatural aid. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. This is a movie about coaching, so there's like mentorship all over this movie. And as a catalyst hero, Boone himself delivers a lot of mentorship, but he also receives it throughout the movie. Good mentorship and bad mentorship. During the call to adventure, when Dr. Day is at Coach Boone's house, He tries to give Coach Boone a higher level picture of who he is. You stood toe-to-toe with the Klan. You marched with Dr. King. You're a man who stands up for his community. And the crowd does that too. This whole community is presenting Herman with his higher self, saying, this is who you are. Exactly. And Herman's saying, no, I'm just a football coach.
This is part of what emboldens Coach Boone to take on the role of a symbol for his community in this very dangerous period of time.
You like an answer to our prayers.
No, wait a minute. I'm not an answer to your prayers. I'm not a savior or Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King, or the Easter Bunny. I'm a football coach, that's all. Just a football coach.
You are a coach. You are a coach.
Okay, final segment of Act 1 is crossing the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. The first element is the black players have gathered in the gym. They are jabberjawing about how well they're going to perform this season. They don't need the white players because from now on, the Titans are going to be powered by soul power. Coach Boone enters the gymnasium channeling R. Lee Ermey from Full Metal Jacket, dresses down Petey Jones, played by Donald Faison.
So good.
Why are you smiling?
Because I love football. Football's fun.
Fun, sir.
Fun, sir.
It's fun.
Yes.
You sure?
I think
Now you're thinking. First you smile, then you think. You think football is still fun?
Yes.
Sir?
Yes. No.
No?
Sir. Well, it was fun.
Not anymore, though, is it?
And then informs everyone. He kind of lays down the law.
We leave for camp. Gettysburg College, August 15th, 7:29 a.m. If you report at 7:30, you will not be playing football this season. You will be watching. You will wear a jacket, shirt, and tie. If you don't have one, buy one. Can't afford one, then borrow one from your old man. If you don't have an old man, then find a drunk, trade him for his. Because I can guarantee you there isn't a bum on the street that looks as raggedy and ridiculous as what I'm looking at right now.
As Coach Hines, played by Greg Allen Williams, is checking in the players, we are officially introduced to Petey Jones, quarterback Jerry Rev Harris, played by Craig Kirkwood, and then Ethan Suppley comes running up and gets in line with all of these black players. And he introduces himself. I'm offensive lineman Louis Lastic. My Navy family just moved here from Bayonne. I heard football and I come running. What's happening, y'all? And he doesn't care what color anybody is. He's just there to play football.
Yeah.
I think Louis is a catalyst character
for sure.
as well, helping to flip both populations, get them interested in each other, because Louis Lastic also loves the Temptations, as does Rev Harris. Coach Yost then disturbs the resulting awkward silence by entering the gym with all of the white players. So now the two coaches have entered from opposite sides of the gym. Those doors are the threshold of them committing to coaching this football team.
Yeah.
Coaches Yost and Boone then have a little aside in the hallway. Coach Yost says, I will stay as long as Coach Tyrell can have a job too. He's been with me too long. I won't leave him out in the cold. And this is where Boone says, you're overcooking my grits, Coach.
Oh, so good.
That is where my current iteration of crossing the first threshold ends.
Yeah, Yost and Boone are committing to their adventure of coaching this team together. That's absolutely where the heroes commit to the adventure. So I am on board 100% with that analysis.
Well, if you don't have anything else to say about Act 1...
I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think I'm.
Now you're thinking. Now you're thinking.
First you analyze, then you think. Now you sure?
All right, then my coffee is empty. I say we stumble over to the... No, we don't stumble. We do not stumble.
Not yet. We stumble back to Act 3 after we go to the Vogler Lounge.
We sashay to the Campbell
What do football
Cafe?
players do? Lumber? Hustle?
I don't think we lumber. We're not big enough to lumber.
We slink more than lumber, but this isn't about us.
I'll meet you at the Campbell Cafe for some coffee, and we will talk about our side quests later.
Better come to work. You drop a pass, you run a mile. You miss a block, you run a mile. You fumble the football, and I will break my foot off in your... And then you will run a mile.
Remember, the Titans, rated PG, starts this Friday.
Welcome to the Campbell Cafe, Jeff. The Campbell Cafe.
Good one.
Where we take a break from the journey, have a cup of coffee, and discuss the side quests that we have undertaken recently. Jeff, what have you been up to since our last episode?
Dan, not a lot in terms of entertainment.
That is not what the people want to hear.
Well,
make something up.
I've been re-listening to some audiobooks for comfort. These are audiobooks that I return to frequently. I re-listened to 11/22/63 probably for the fourth
That's a chunky one.
fifth time. I re-listened to Hail Mary, the novel by Andy Weir.
Oh,
that's a 5-star book for me. If you haven't read or listened to Hail Mary,
Project Hail Mary.
Yes, Project Hail Mary.
Okay.
It's from the author of The Martian,
Yes.
which became a big feature film.
Yes.
On IMDb, there is supposedly a film version of Project Hail Mary in development with Ryan Gosling attached. So that would be an interesting.
Oh, that's the connection.
I did then stray way back into my lane and read Joyland by Stephen King, which is so. As you know, Stephen King publishes a big fat hardback novel once a year. That's pretty much his process. But he also writes so much that he releases short story collections, and then he has a series of novels that he publishes under Hard Case Fiction, which is like a little imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all these novels that you're like, wait, when did that come out?
They're like pulp crime novels.
Well, that's how they're pitched, but they're really just Stephen King novels that are too small in scope to publish under his normal thing. And also Richard Bachman. Like, the guy is just incredible. Anyway, Joyland is the story of a young man who goes to work at a seaside amusement park for the summer, and there's a legend of a girl who was murdered on the haunted house ride. And so that becomes, as many of his books have, the central horror, thriller, suspense aspect. But it's really like all Stephen King novels about growing up and relationships. And it was totally worth reading if you're a Stephen King fan. I just trust him implicitly as a storyteller, so I'll go on whatever rambling journey he wants to take me. How about you, Dan?
As far as movies, I think the ones that I want to discuss are the 1973 and 1974 Richard Lester films, The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers. Have you ever seen these?
No.
I really enjoyed them. These are live-action films. Richard Lester originally produced a single long movie that was way too long, so the studio kind of had him kill bill it and chop it into 2 movies that they released in 1973 and then the follow-up in 1974. I didn't know what to expect. It was a really good adventure story, and it was funny. I did not expect it to be funny.
Huh.
There were some laugh-out-loud moments, but there's also Oliver Reed plays Athos. His fight scenes, he goes all in.
Huh.
He goes hard on these scenes, so much so that the other actors saw what he was doing and felt like they were sandbagging it, and they had to elevate their performances in terms of the swordplay and the action scenes.
Wow.
The stuntmen who were supposed to face off against him drew straws to see which one had to go and film a scene with him because they were scared of him.
What made you decide to watch this film?
There is a podcast called Unspooled, hosted by the comedian Paul Scheer and film critic Amy Nicholson. They had as guests Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery of the new Video Archives podcast to discuss The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers.
Okay.
I encouraged you to listen to the first episode of the Video Archives podcast and really pay attention to the story about cocaine cowboys. Mm-hmm. You haven't done that yet, I can tell.
I did listen to 11/22/63 for the 5th time in my defense.
I would encourage you to listen to this episode of Unspooled about the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers, because again, Tarantino is a film history encyclopedia, and the stories that he tells, the information he knows about these filmmakers it's just fascinating to listen to him speak.
Well, I just looked up the director, Richard Lester, that you mentioned. He directed The Beatles' Hard Day's Night, Help, Superman 2 and 3, and Robin and Marion, the Sean Connery
Correct.
we were mentioning at one point.
Because Richard Lester was a director of several of those Beatles films, The Three Musketeers was originally developed as a vehicle for the Beatles.
And the fourth would have had to be Ringo.
No, because D'Artagnan, he's the young Spitfire handsome one. So it would have had to
Paul.
have been probably, well, I was going to say George.
Well, I guess we're revealing our kinks, aren't we?
All right, well, I could go on. I've got several other things, but we need to get back to the locker room and finish Remember the Titans.
Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with tests, allies, enemies, aka the road of trials. Now in the special world, our hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove his worthiness. On the allies roster, we have assistant coach Hines, the offensive line coach. We've got Carol Boone, Coach Boone's wife. We have Dr. Ferdinand Day of the school board, who has Coach Boone's back, also acts as the herald, bringing the call to adventure. And I listed the black community of Alexandria at large. And then we have team members. The team is split into, I guess, allies and shapeshifters and enemies. It's tough because the team is students who are being coached. But if Boone's mission is to step outside the role of just coach and become a transformative figure in the community, then these characters are on one side of the line or the other. So we've got Julius Campbell, Petey Jones, the running back. Well, he begins as a running back. I guess you could put him in his shapeshifter too, because he kind of goes. Anyway, played by Donald Faison from Scrubs. We got Jared Rev Harris, the quarterback. Louis Lastic, the offensive lineman from Bayonne, Louisiana. The only white boy who shows up of his own accord.
Yeah.
And then we've got Blue, Allen, Sunshine, the rest of the team. On the enemy side, we have super racist assistant coach Tyrell. He is just an unrepentant redneck from hell.
Wow.
Ray Buds, the fullback, who is against the coach from day one and stays that way.
Yeah, he is one of the very few characters who does not change for the better by the end of the film.
Yes, agreed.
And I think it would have been unrealistic if suddenly everybody ended the film as best friends and
it's a pretty Disney
allies.
ending. It would have been hard to swallow.
They had to have somebody who stayed a racist.
And then we have the character credited as the executive director. And I don't know if it's like the high school sports organization or something, but he has something to do with people being accepted into the Hall of Fame and or hired or fired as coaches. I didn't really understand.
Those characters were not well defined. It was clear that they were in a position of authority over the coaches, but what their exact titles were, it was unclear, and I don't even think they ever had names.
And it doesn't really matter. It's not that it stood in the way of the story. It was just like, got it.
Correct.
Authority figures, they pick and choose.
Right.
Most of the school board is against him. The opposing teams and their coaches. And then at large, really, the pro-segregation white community in Alexandria. That's the biggest enemy.
Yeah.
And then we have shapeshifters. This is a movie about changing hearts and minds. So from Coach Boone's perspective, he wants everyone to be a shapeshifter. He's trying to shift their shapes from enemy to ally. And so the number one shapeshifter is Coach Yost himself.
Yep.
We immediately get the impression he's a decent man, but he's pushing back against Boone at first just for being here, and then for the way he's coaching the boys, and then for the way he insists that Yost coach the boys, but slowly his alliances shift until he's a member of the Boone congregation. He's drinking the Kool-Aid by the end of the movie. My favorite shapeshifter and my favorite character in this movie and my favorite performance in this movie, even though Denzel Washington is in it, is Gary Bertier.
Ah.
That actor, is it Ryan Hurst? Is that
Ryan
his name?
Hurst, yes.
He is so uncomplicatedly clear about what he believes in at every point in this movie. And there are points in the movie where he is deeply confused, and he's not ashamed to be confused, not trying to hide it. He's just confused. It's Gary Bertier, starts out as a not just a racist, but a leader of the anti-segregation. He's going to lead those football team players to go push back on the black people who are protesting the store owner who shot one of their community members.
Yep.
He's the team captain, but he's the bad guy captain. And by the end of the movie, he's not only switched side, but he's become a catalyst hero. And now he's changing hearts. I'm getting emotional. His transformation in this movie is what grabs me by the heart and squeezes. He's just such a fantastic character, so clearly written and played by the writer and by Ryan Hurst. Okay, Yost's daughter, Cheryl, she's a shapeshifter. She starts out, she is against Boone, and by the end, she is united with him for her love of football. I love her so much in this movie. She won the Young Artist Award in 2001 for her performance in this film.
Oh, wow. The way Cheryl behaves at the football games where she's yelling and screaming and stomping around. And my wife, Michelle, when she was that age, her dad was the president of the Little League Association in Orange County. And so she was Cheryl. She was, yelling, just screaming at the players.
From the writers and the director's point of view, Cheryl serves a really important purpose in this movie, which is if you are not a football fan and if you're watching this movie and you can't track the plays and the action, she is standing in saying, hey, this is what's happening. The bad guys are winning and they shouldn't, or the good guys are winning. She is informing you, the audience, about the status of each game, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great statement.
Gary's girlfriend, Emma, played by Kate Bosworth, is another great shapeshifter story. She does not want to be around black people, doesn't want to shake hands with them, and then by the end, she's come around. And then I mentioned the pro-segregation white community in Alexandria. The community at large is a shapeshifter. In the course of the story, he really transforms the community from one that's broken to one that's beginning to come together. Okay, tests. Holy crap, Dan.
Weird that there's just one test in this movie, though.
Right.
That's...
This is like, was it The Rock, where we just had list after list after list of plot?
Oh, it was yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the tests actually have a nice encapsulated sequence, and it's the 2 weeks of football camp at Gettysburg College.
We'll just leave it at that.
Football camp. Moving on. Coach Boone, as the hero, his ability to unify the team is tested. His ability to collaborate with anyone.
And listen.
His ability to do anything but be a dictator, which he says at the beginning of the film, this is no democracy, it's a dictatorship. And Boone's and Yost's reluctant partnership is tested. So it's departure day. The boys are leaving for camp. Imagine Coach Boone, Coach Yost there, the players, all the parents, the buses have parked, everyone's dressed nicely. They're going to get on the bus and go to camp. Gary Bertier, he's the only All-American on the team. He walks up to Boone and he demands,
you want any of us to play for you? You reserve half the open positions for Hammond players. Half the offense, half the special teams. We don't need any of your people on defense. We're already set.
Your people. Now, Denzel Washington's so great. Without yelling, without gesticulating, he very calmly, absolutely humiliates him and his buddy Ray Buds. Calls him Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin in front of the whole crowd, introducing him, clapping for them. And then he tells Gary, look at your mama. See your mama over there? Look at your mama. Say goodbye to her. Because once you get on that bus, you ain't got no mama no more. You got your brothers on the team and you got your daddy. Who's your daddy? And he who's your daddy's him. So that's a win.
Yes.
He beats Gary Bertier down, and he demonstrates his dominance in front of everyone in one fell swoop. Then he has a face-off with the whole team. He makes them all get off the buses and integrate. One white player, one black player sitting next to each other. He reorganizes them not into black and white, but into defense and offense, which is... He's like, this is about football. I don't care about your racism. Get your ass on the bus. It's about football. Now, there's a team test on the bus. I think it's Blue, tries to start a chorus of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. And Julius shuts him up with a comment that would have been racist coming out of the mouth of a white man. He says, I don't want to hear none of your minstrel show singing. And Bertier is sitting next to Julius and says, yeah. And Campbell says, you can shut up too. So we're immediately seeing Julius and Gary beginning their antagonistic relationship. That's a fail for Blue to try and get the bus together, and it's a fail for Julius because he's rejecting everyone. He is not on either side. They arrive at Gettysburg College, and their team unity is tested, fail. Ray bullies Rev out of his bunk. Gary and Julius argue over a poster. It turns into a fight. Everybody joins in. Alan, Ryan Gosling, opens the door and he's like, sees them and is like, fight! And then everybody piles in.
Yeah, it becomes a melee.
It really does. And there is a recurring theme of violence in this movie. Racial violence, sports violence. And this dog pile is echoed on the field and in later locker room scenes, but it's a friendly kind of camaraderie sports violence with each other.
What?
So this particular scene has an echo later, and it's just really cool
You're
to
not
see
saying
how
this is a friendly, you're saying the later scenes are
No,
okay.
no.
All right. I got you.
No. There's, a football team, those guys are physical, and they're physical with each other. They punch each other, they hit each other on the field, off the field, in the locker room. And so you see their aggression be transformed from this sort of racial vitriol at the beginning into sort of like fun violence at the end. But it's still violence. So then after this fight, Coach Boone reads them the riot act, and he says football is about harnessing anger and turning that anger into a team effort to achieve perfection. And the price that he puts on every mistake is you run a mile. Any mistake you make, you run a mile. So he's going to turn their desire to avoid running a mile into perfection. It's a great incentive because they all get in real good shape because they do not behave well. Then we have what Dan has affectionately termed a Montague. We see intense football training. We got inspiring music. We got Hayden Panettiere yelling. Yost is folksy. Boone is aggressive. This is a Montague showing they're not a good team. So it's a failure.
They're not working together as a team.
Yeah, it's let's establish how they're not working together so that we can build on this. This 2-week camp sequence is a classic sports trope.
We saw it in Major League during spring training. This is the
exactly.
same sequence of events.
So Louis sits down at dinner with some black players, including Julius and Rev. And Julius bristles, like, what is this white boy doing? But Rev softens him up. This is a pass. Louis is now accepted. This is the beginning of the integration. And then, cut to the white table, Ray and Gary are talking, and Ray says, I'm not going to block for Rev. And Gary says, if you don't, you're not going to start. This is the beginning of Gary's transformation because you see him caring more about the team now than about the racial divide. He's still a racist, but he's saying if you don't do that, it's bad for the team. Ray says, I'm going to bide my time. It's not going to last. I'll do what I want until eventually they get cut. In another test, Yost tries to give Boone some coaching advice in the form of trick plays. So he takes this paper and passes it across to Boone in front of the rest of the coaching staff. And Boone rebuffs him. You worry about your team and I'll worry about running the strategy.
That is a recurring statement between the two. Anytime one of them criticizes the other, the response is, you worry about your side and let me worry about mine. Like they do not communicate as coaches.
They're playing a separate but equal game with each other, which is a broken integrity for each of their characters. And that's the one really that both of them have to overcome. Because they have integrity except in this one place. They both believe in the team, but they're not a team. So I think it's a toss-up. You could see it as a win for Boone because he's establishing his dominance as I am the coach, I am the leader. And he's doing it in front of the other assistant coaches. He's saying, I'm in charge. None of y'all are going to subvert me with your trick plays or whatever. Or you can see it as a failure because he's letting his ego alienate the man who should be his partner.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, I think it's a complex situation. In the situation that Boone is in that moment, could he really afford to accept that kind of advice in front of all the others? What kind of tone would that have set, especially with the tone he's setting with the players? So it's a complicated situation. Okay, so then here's an interesting test. Boone decides he's going to do an icebreaker with the players. He calls up Louis and says, tell me something about your roommate. He basically reveals that his roommate Blue wears leopard print underwear?
Spotted underwear, bikini style.
And Boone's like, okay, maybe something less personal. So then he talks about Rev. And he says great things about Rev. And Louis is an example of what Boone wants. So he's like, okay, this is a pass. And then he asks anybody else. And nobody responds. Nobody wants to play this game except Louis. So Boone says, all right, and he orders them to spend time with a teammate of another color and learn about them and report back. And until they do, they'll do 3 practices a day.
And if you continue to ignore each other, we'll go to 4 a day.
So Boone's whole coaching strategy is physical punishment for lack of compliance. Boone also, in this moment, has a kind of, it's an interesting shift because he asks Louis if Louis has plans to go to college or if he dreams of being a football player. And Louis says, hell no, I'm not cut out for college, and I'm never going to be a pro player. I'm just here. If I have to be in school, I might as well hit some people. So Boone kind of laughs, says, all right, I like that attitude, and then pulls him aside and says, hey, I'll help you with your grades. Every week you bring me your scores and I'll help you. So already Boone is stepping outside his role of coach, and he's going to help this kid outside of football. I only have 16 more tests. Let me see if I can get through them faster. Louis sings The Temptations and wins everyone over. Pass. Ray is a jerk to Petey. Fail. Ryan Gosling makes Blue listen to Buck Owens. Fail. Rev offers to tutor Louis. He says, no, I'm white trash. I'm never going to college. This is a pass for Rev. Like Boone, he's committed to the team. He's committed to his teammates. This is a fail for Louis, who is surrendering to his self-doubt.
Yeah, he says, I'm not going to be anything other than no good white trash.
Again, to zoom out to the philosophy of this movie, that's a great moment of class unity that defies race. Is this guy believes that because of where he came from, he will not be able to succeed. Gary's girlfriend makes him say, I love you. So Gary's on the payphone in the hallway, and all the players are lined up, and she's making him say, I love you. And he says it, and then everyone in the hallway makes fun of him. I thought that was a pass because black and white, they are joined in the sports team tradition of humiliating anyone for showing any kind of tenderness. So I thought that was a pass. Boone makes the team do up downs. Yost tells Boone he's working them too hard. Boone relents. He blows the whistle and ends the practice. This is a pass for Boone and Yost. They're working together now. They're taking each other's advice. After a hard practice, a fight breaks out at the water cooler. This is a fail. The team has not yet come together. The Gary Julius enemies to friends plotline is my favorite in this movie. I'm going to cry just talking about it. So Gary, because he believes in the team and he wants the team to win, he goes to Julius to, quote unquote, get particulars so they can get it over with and put an end to these 3-a-day practices. Gary confronts Julius in this scene about his selfish playing. He says, you're a waste of God-given talent the way you're playing right now.
You can't run over everybody in this league, and every time you do, you leave one of your teammates hanging out to dry. Me in particular.
Julius is clearly surprised that Gary has just acknowledged his talent, but he comes back and criticizes Gary for not leading.
Captain's supposed to be the leader, right?
Right.
You got a job?
I have a job.
You been doing your job?
I've been doing my job.
Then why don't you tell your white buddies to block for Rev better? Because they have not blocked for him worth a plug nickel, and you know it.
So I think, though this is a conflict that ends badly, I think it's a pass because they're starting to show respect for each other enough to tell them the truth about how they feel. And though it's a conflict, they both learn something about each other and themselves in that scene. And it's a really great scene. When they both walk away, there's a look on both of their faces like they're shook. Coach Boone leads the team on a long run through the woods to the site of the Battle of Gettysburg, where he claims 50,000 men died fighting the same fight we're still fighting today. And he says, take a lesson from the dead. I don't care if you like each other, but you will respect each other, and maybe you will learn to play this game like men. This is a turning point in the tests, but it's not the end. We have a night practice. It's a running play. And once more, Ray does not block for Rev, and Gary confronts him.
What was that, Ray? Whatever it is, it ain't blocking.
Give me a break.
You want a break? I'll give you a break. Me and Julius.
Wait a minute. Just let them
Get
handle
to
this.
Rev once, just one time. I swear to God, I'm gonna hit you so hard by the time you come to. Ooh, boy, you're gonna need a new haircut. You understand me?
They run the play again, and this time it works, and Julius lays Petey out. And Gary celebrates, and he hits Julius and says,
Left side!
and for a minute, you think Julius is going to jump on Gary and beat the crap out of him. But instead, he hits him back.
Wrong side!
And they start to chant.
Left side!
And they push each other and they slam helmets. The music swells. This is a breakthrough. Our two protagonists, our biggest protagonists, well, second biggest, have become allies. And this is what I'm talking about. they're violent with each other. They are slamming each other. They are banging helmets. But it's the bonding kind of violence here. And now, Dan, we have another Montague. This time, instead of being the Montague of the team failing, it's the team coming together.
I'm so glad I've got you calling them Montagues now, too.
If you're confused about why we're calling it a Montague, pop into the Better Off Dead episode and re-listen to that because Dan explains it. Enter a new player, quarterback Ronnie Sunshine Bass of Huntington Beach, California. Gary makes fun of his long hippie hair, calls him a fruitcake, and as soon as Gary turns his back, he's, 100 yards down the field. Ronnie tosses a pass and hits him in the back.
Bullseye.
And this is obviously it's a great pass for our new character Ronnie Bass, but it's a pass for Julius and Gary because Julius laughs and makes fun of Gary, but they're friends. So they're making fun of each other in a friendly way, which
it's like you and I do.
Yeah. So that's a great pass because when you can make fun of somebody in front of all their friends and they laugh along with you, that's someone you can call a friend. So they let Bass on the team, but they make him cut his hair. So he passes that test, and then he passes the team test, more importantly. The guys are making fun of him in his hair. Petey calls him Sunshine. Ronnie turns to him and looks him in the eye and then smiles and says, I can dig that. I can dig that name. And then calls Petey bro and slaps him some skin. And Petey's like, he called me bro. So he's in.
Yeah, he instantly earns respect because he's participating in the locker room jocularity.
Jocularity, ladies and gentlemen. Dan has coined a new term. I love it. This next pass is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. And again, it's Ryan Hurst's performance, the mama jokes. So Blue makes a joke about how he misses Ronnie's long hair because it reminded him of Bertier's mama. And cut to Gary, and he's looking like, what did he just say? Like, he is ready to absolutely murder him. Mm-hmm. But Julius holds him back with one hand and makes a mama joke about Blue. And you see Gary's like confused, he's offended, but then it dawns on him it's just a ritual. So as the mama jokes happen, here comes Louie, and he makes a mama joke about Petey's mama. And again, Louie's the one who crosses the racial boundary with ease. And now everyone's laughing, and Gary's like, now that's a mama's joke. So I love, again, it's maybe 30 seconds long, that scene, and Gary goes from ready to fight to laughing. So this time when Blue starts singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough, the whole locker room joins in. Another pass moment. We saw it fail on the bus. Now we see it succeed in the locker room.
Everyone except for Ray, who's just sitting there with a grumpy sourpuss on his face.
Grumpy Ray. It's a shame about Ray. The male bonding reaches a homoerotic peak when, in a strange act of dominance, Ronnie walks up to Gary, has a short exchange, and then kisses him on the mouth.
Yep.
Gary, in a moment of total confusion, does what he knows best and starts swinging at him, and Ronnie just dodges him and lays him out. And Julius stops the fight. Oddly, this really puts an end to the beef between Sunshine and Gary. It's just so weird. He just doesn't know what to do. And Julius is, when he tells Julius he kissed me, Julius looks at him like, what just happened? And then there's this whole subplot about Petey being freaked out, whether Ronnie's gay or not, and Ronnie won't tell him.
Yeah.
It's so great. In another pass, actually, this is a fail. Cheryl Yost gives Boone a reluctant compliment, and he's a sexist dick to her.
Yes.
Why don't you go get her some pretty dolls or something? What a jerk.
Right. Yeah, we're seeing that while Coach Boone can fight for racial equality, he still has a long way to go regarding gender equality.
And in reflection of that, and we don't have time to go into every awesome moment in this movie, but Boone's daughter, Nikki, and Yost's daughter, Cheryl, have a great relationship where Cheryl wants to do sports, and Nikki's like, I just got my nails done. It's great. Okay, it's the final practice of camp, and Gary whips the team into a bonding frenzy. What kind of power you got? And Julius says, soul power. And this chant begins, and the team is united. They have now shown us how to fix racism.
Except for Ray.
This practice marks the end of the term at Football Hogwarts.
Let me ask you something, Mr. Campbell. What kind of power you got?
Oh, man, you know I got some soul power.
What kind of power you got?
What kind of question is that? I got soul power.
Yes, you do.
Right on. Let me ask you something now, Mr. Ordeal.
Yes.
How strong are you?
I'm too strong.
What? How strong?
I'm too strong.
How strong?
Too strong.
Right on,
I want a
man.
victory.
No, I want a victory.
I want a victory.
No, I want a victory.
You want a victory?
100% agree. Absolutely.
Woo!
This is this chant, also this final practice, that's where the French bread comes into play, our second appearance of French bread in consecutive episodes. I didn't get it at first.
Neither did I.
I was like, what? What is pain? French bread. And then, okay, womp womp.
I didn't get it.
I laughed. Once I got it, once it dawned on me, and it took, what is fatigue? Army clothes. The second line after that, before I realized, oh, that's what they're doing.
So this is a auditory joke, but if you spell the word pain, it's the same way you spell bread in French. I didn't get it, Dan, until I turned the subtitles on for my final watch, and I saw the way it was spelled, and I was like, oh, so great.
Approach to the inmost cave. The hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. The approach, for me, is rather long, but it is a series of moments representing racial fracturing. Not caused only by the community, but fractures that begin to appear within the team itself. As a result of this new environment. As you said, yes, they solved racism at this 2-week football training camp, but when they return, they are being bussed into school on the first day of class through a protest. People holding signs protesting the integration. There are white people screaming at the black people saying, we don't want you here.
Yep.
Gary introduces his girlfriend Emma to Julius, and Julius holds out his hand to shake, and she just scoffs and turns around and walks away. Completely disrespects him. And Julius says,
Camp over now, huh? Back to the real world, Bertia. This what they integrating us for? We'd have been better off staying where we were.
It's a heartbreaking statement. It illustrates the enormity of the situation that these kids found themselves in. They may have mended wounds at training camp, but that was a microcosm compared to what they returned to, the entire city, the entire country.
Yeah.
At night, Coach Boone walks onto the football field, and he tells Doc,
This is my sanctuary right here. All this hatred and turmoil swirling around us, but this is always right.
And Doc says, I'm afraid I've put you into a no-win situation.
I just found out the board didn't even think you'd make it out of camp. And now that you have, I've learned that at the first sign of trouble...
Trouble? What kind of trouble?
Lose a game. They'll fire you and turn it back over to Yost.
One game, just like that.
Then we cut to game 1 of the football season. T.C. Williams versus Hayfield. The spectators have segregated themselves. There are black fans on one side of the aisle, white fans on the other side of the aisle. Coach Boone's pregame nerves get the better of him as he vomits.
Yeah, one of 2 moments of weakness we see from him.
Coach Boone's pregame pep talk to the team then is about unity, about how the team is stronger for their integration. All the other schools that they're going to play are non-integrated white teams. And he says, in Greek mythology, the Titans were stronger even than the gods. They ruled their universe with absolute power. Well, that football field out there tonight, that's our universe. Let's rule it like Titans. And then we cut to the game. Cheryl is stomping and yelling and screaming in the stands. Alan Bosley is having trouble sticking with his man. The receiver scores a touchdown. Petey misses a block, and Coach Boone benches him. And as Petey is dejected and walking away, Coach Yost runs up to him and asks Petey to play linebacker in place of Allen. And Petey has a little moment of refusal of the call. He says, I haven't practiced with defense. I don't know their plays. I don't know what to do. And he says, I don't care. Just stick to number 23. That's all I need you to do. Coach Boone asks Coach Hines if he thinks Yost is trying to let Hayfield score on purpose.
Yeah.
To force a loss, which would then result in his firing. But Petey actually proves to be excellent at the position, and at a critical moment, he forces a fumble, which is then picked up by the Titans and returned for the game-winning touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Post-game, some of the team are hanging out downtown. There's a little more racial fracturing here. When Alan is lamenting being replaced by Petey, and my dad's going to be mad at me, and Gary says, don't worry about it, they just like to celebrate. Julius, who's standing there, he's like, what do you mean they? It's like the, what do you mean you people from Tropic Thunder? And that causes a little bit of friction. Then a car pulls up and honks for Gary's attention. Ray is in the car riding shotgun. Emma is in the backseat, and they say, come with us. We're all heading over the hill. Everybody's going to be there. And he says, no, just why don't you stay down here with us? So like the whole team's hanging out down here. And Emma says, standing up for what you believe in is one thing, but you're on the wrong side of this. And Gary says, I felt like this was a clunky Hollywood line. Like people don't talk like this. He says, when something unexpected happens, you just got to pick it up and run with it. And Emma responds, yeah, but I'm not running in the same direction as you, Gary. And then the car drives off.
It's funny, now that you mention it, I agree. That's a very Hollywood line. But when Gary said it, it just rolled right past me. I think he did a great job, as good as an actor can, delivering a stilted line.
Then Sunshine offers to buy Petey and Blue dinner, and Petey and Blue say, no, this is Virginia. We're not welcome in that establishment. They go inside, and immediately the white owner of that establishment says, nope, I reserve the right to refuse service.
Yeah, we don't serve your kind here, basically.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. And Petey is humiliated, and he dresses down Sunshine.
I didn't know, man.
I told you. What you mean you didn't know? What, you think I was playing with you?
Man, he ain't know, Petey.
Blue, he don't want to know.
All the black players that are in that little group, they separate from the white players, and they walk off. So now we've got a deeper fracturing.
Yes.
Later, Gary is getting dressed at home to go play basketball with Julius, but his mother forbids him to go. Gary says, Mom, please just get to know him. Mom says, I don't want to get to know him, and you're coming to church with me. Then we cut to game 2 versus Herndon. The Titans are not playing at their peak. The team itself has lost their edge. They're not playing as a team anymore. They still managed to win the game, but not because of their stellar play.
Man, I didn't sign up to play like this.
These guys we playing got no heart. We play like this against Groveton. We're going down.
At school, Petey is chatting with some white girls about Sunshine, because they're all the girls are looking out the window admiring Sunshine as Sunshine does Tai Chi in the school courtyard.
Yeah.
And some big burly white dude walks up and gets in Petey's face and says, you talking to my girl? And that kicks off a fight. Gary and Julius have to show up and separate the combatants, who then turn on. Julius is holding back the black guys. Gary is holding back the white guys. The black guys call Julius an Uncle Tom. The white guy says to Gary, it looks like you went to the zoo and found some new friends. Holy smoke. So now, not only are they fracturing as a team with racial divide, even what would be considered their own people, using the parlance of that time, are turning on them.
Right.
And that scene ends with Gary and Julius alone in the hallway looking at each other like, what the heck just happened?
It's a turning point for them for sure, because I think they realize they are the leaders and it's costing them all their allegiances.
Yes. And in what I saw as the final moment of Approach to the Inmost Cave, Blue and Louie call a team meeting, get everybody in the gym at night, and remind everybody of the world that they are living in an attempt to rally the troops. He says, Coach Boone got us together, but he's not always going to be there for us. And society, the community at large outside these doors, is trying to break us apart. And we need to stick together. This is our time to rally. And then they all do a chant. They all gather and hoo-ha, hoo-ha.
It's a revival. That's
what I saw as the end of the Approach to the Inmost Cave.
Yeah, there's that element of approach that's preparing for the battle. And that for sure is that meeting.
Agreed.
I included one other thing, which is the throwing of the rock through the window.
Okay.
And the subsequent argument between Yost and Boone. So while Coach Yost's daughter, Cheryl, is at the Boones, someone tosses a rock or a brick through the window and yells, "Hey, Coach Coon." Boone walks out onto his porch with a shotgun and sees somebody driving away. The next day at school, Yost confronts Boone as they're walking up the stairs. And it's a very complicated conversation, but essentially Yost is saying the sin of pride, of your bragging and your boasting about this team is what brought this down on you. Boone is like, so wait, you think what happened was my fault? And Yost says, well, when it affects my daughter, yes, I think your sin matters. And Boone says, maybe you're just getting a taste of what my daughters go through. Welcome to my life, Yost. The reason I put that in the approach is because, like you said, the racial fracturing is causing the team to fracture. And now the coaches are fracturing on a very personal level, the safety of their children.
Yeah.
And because of what I chose as the ordeal, all of that is relevant pre-circumstance to how this ordeal unwinds.
I totally accept that.
I had a tough line, though, because I thought, man, someone throwing a brick through your window it feels like a peak of violence. Violence.
Right.
But
that's why I've got it in ordeal, particularly because suddenly a shotgun is produced. This is the first time the threat of death is on screen. We've talked about the violence of fistfights and on-field football violence, but this is the first time.
It's the first time we see our hero being assaulted with a weapon and taking out a weapon. But because this is a sports movie, I saw this as all as what leads up to the burning building. This is all what's leading up to the central fight. So
yeah, I'll accept
that. brings us to Ordeal. Our hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. I mean, it's a sports movie, right? So the ordeal almost has to be a game. In this case, it's the Titans versus the undefeated Groveton Lions. Boone and Yost, fresh off their arguments, show up at the locker room, and it's clear they've caught the players in a conversation, almost like you walk in and catch someone talking about you.
Yeah, there's a conspiratorial hush.
A conspiratorial unity as well. And Blue says, we just want to let you know we're going to warm up a little bit different. And they come out onto the field with this new chant.
Everywhere we go, people want to know, people want to know.
And they're dancing. There's like a...
Yeah, they do a dance warm-up, and it is completely original. It has nothing to do with the coaches. This is something the team has invented, and the other team is just flabbergasted. The coach says, what do you think they are, the Beatles? They line up for the play. Louis calls an audible. Ray clearly hears it and disregards it.
Yep.
And as a result, Kip Tyler, the nose guard, gets through the line and sacks Rev hard, and his wrist gets broken. Boone takes him out of the game, and after a short pep speech in which he exaggerates the number of siblings that he has while talking about losing both his parents in the same month and being left to take care of them, he puts in Sunshine, who's never been able to pull off this handoff pass that they're about to play. The veer, I think they call it. Sunshine makes the play, and when Tyler comes, so he makes the pass. When Tyler comes running for him, Sunshine hunches and then boosts himself up and throws Tyler over him to land flat on his back.
Ass over tea kettle.
Ronnie is a badass. So the tide is turned, and we get another Montague of the rest of this game.
I like how we're seeing Sunshine, he's doing his Tai Chi, and when he kisses Gary in the locker room at camp, and he deftly dodges all of the punches that Gary throws at him, and then Aikidos him into the lockers. His move against Kip Tyler here, he flows just like his hair.
He's a badass.
He's a completely different kind of football player.
Yes, that game is the ordeal. It is the turning point. The team is at its worst possible moment. They come together. They face potential defeat by an undefeated team, and independent from the coaches in many ways, they decide to come together. The coaches come together, and they win this game. So I see that as the ordeal.
Even the stadium announcer very helpfully tells the audience,
this is the first true test of the season for the undefeated T.C. Williams Titans, because tonight they're going up against the undefeated Groveton Lions.
Their all-state nose guard, Kip Tyler's as mean as a copperhead snake.
This is the ordeal, clearly, of the Titans.
I've got one extra moment of the ordeal, Gary cutting Ray.
I had that in reward. It's a hard scene, and I guess it would be unusual to put it in the reward segment, but to me, this is growth that Gary has achieved. It's a reward he's earned by leading his team to victory, that he has now earned the right to decide who's on the team, and it's a transformation for him. He's had so many opportunities to make a stand against Ray, and he does in that final practice at camp, but here he really takes a stand.
So then you have put that into reward, or the ultimate boon. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. So with that in mind, I can understand that placement. Gary has fully seized the role of team captain. Not only is he uniting his team and leading his team to wins on the field, they are undefeated at this point, but now he is also accepting the responsibility of having to cut somebody. Not only just somebody, but a guy who was his best friend at the start of the film.
Yeah.
Continuing the reward, Julius arrives at Gary's house and meets Mrs. Bertier, and as Cat Stevens sings Peace Train, we see through the living room window Julius walk up to Mrs. Bertier and get her in a bear hug and lift her up off her feet.
That's great.
Then we see another Montague of the Titans going undefeated, rapid fire through the rest of this season. And then the final moment of reward, Coach Yost is being honored at a dinner for Hall of Fame nominees. But the conclusion of that scene is in the next segment of the journey. Therefore, I end Act 2 here.
I don't think you mentioned this one thing, but right after they win the game in the locker room, they're celebrating, and Boone awards the game ball.
The game ball to Sunshine.
But then Sunshine hands it off to Rev. Now, this is a whole new kind of unity, right? They're operating as a true team now where they are passing the success down the line. And in a fit of excitement, Louis grabs Rev's arm and holds it up in victory.
Broken arm.
And he winces in pain, and then all the teams, they just pile on him and start beating him. And that was the scene, that dog pile moment is the scene that I remembered as an echo of the fight.
The melee in the dorms at camp.
Exactly right. That theme of violence, bad, friendly violence, that I just, in a sports movie, there's always roughhousing. For me, it was particularly poignant that they all start dogpiling on Louis and everyone thinks it's funny. That's such a turn. It's such a turn. Anyway.
Yeah, it's good-natured.
Well, Dan, I think it's time for us to take a break.
Okay.
Head over to the Vogler Lounge and enjoy a beverage.
Looking forward to it. Jeffrey!
Yes.
Welcome to the Vogler Lounge, where I am finishing my Campbell Cafe coffee.
Me too.
For my themed beverage, I have an Islay Scotch. What is the primary characteristic of an Islay Scotch?
Petey! It's Petey!
That is correct.
Love this.
And this was my wife's idea. So I have a Peat Monster from Compass Box Scotch Whiskey Makers. They call themselves specifically Scotch Whiskey Maker instead of distiller because they say that embodies the blending and the whole making of it. There's more to what they're doing than just the distilling of the whiskey. So anyway, so what they do, they source scotches from distillers and then blend them together into their own blended whiskey. So the Peat Monster is one of their signature bottles. It is a blend of Kalila Distillery, Lafroig Distillery, and a 1% Highland malt blend, which includes Glenmoray, Tomatin, and Balmenoch. 1% of those are Highland scotches, but the rest is Islay scotches, which are very peaty. Petey Jones.
I love that so much.
Very pale, straw in color, I would say. The nose, campfire. There's a hint of sweetness, though, that I'm not used to. Like, we've had Lafroig before, and I described it as eating bonfire smoke.
Lafroig is the sound your throat makes when you drink it. Lefroy.
I do enjoy Lefroy, but it can be aggressive. A lot of people who say they don't like Scotch is because they don't like peaty Scotch. The super smoky stuff like Lefroy or like Peat Monster. But there are really nice, smooth Scotches out there. I'm trying to identify what the sweet quality is. I don't know. I'm going to take a sip. My tongue felt like it was slick. So I wonder if this is a particularly oily Scotch. I don't know. I don't have any water. I wish I'd brought a little thing of water. I could have dropped some few drops in there and see if I could see some separation of the oils. It does not taste as aggressively peaty as something like Lefroy, even though this is 35% Lefroy. So whatever the Kalila, and I've never had Kalila. I'm not even familiar with it. I have not heard of it, but it is also an Islay distillery. So whatever they've made, blended with the Lefroy and then the 1% Highland malt blend, I wonder if that 1% is enough to temper the super smoky quality of this. I'm not saying it's not. It's called Peat Monster, for crying out loud. So this is
not smoky. It is smoky or it's not. You drink or you smell
smoky.
And then you smoke.
No, I mean yes.
Oh, it is smoky then.
Oh, first you're drinking, now you're thinking.
Yeah.
Zero peat, sir.
You gonna drink that?
That one I inhaled a little bit as this is really good, Jeff.
Oh, really?
This is really good. I know that you don't. All right, here's a little backstory for everybody. When did we do NaNoWriMo?
2011.
11. Okay, so we did NaNoWriMo. Jeff called me to adventure and had me do a NaNoWriMo with him in 2011. Wow.
NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month, where you commit to writing 1,667 words a day for 30 days, and when you're done, you have a 50,000-word novel manuscript. So this is the first novel manuscript either of us have ever written, and it was the beginning of that's how my career started, is writing NaNoWriMo.
When we finished writing those, we went to a pub to celebrate. And I remember, Jeff, you said, I want a good Scotch. That's what I want to write my, like you went full Ernest Hemingway. I was like, I'm going to write a novel and I'm going to go to a pub and I'm going to have a Scotch. Neither of us were Scotch consumers. I don't think we really knew what we were talking about. So we went to this place. You keep trying to talk. Go ahead. Interject.
If I remember correctly, I asked, what's your most expensive Scotch? And they said $150 a glass or something. And I'm like, maybe we not that.
Dial that back.
Not that good.
Dial that
we
back.
haven't published the novels yet, so maybe we just.
So anyway, we said, okay, well, give us something representative. And we don't know what the bartender poured for us, but it was super smoky. I really liked it. What was your impression of that Scotch way back then and 10 years ago now?
I remember thinking, this tastes like I want something to taste when I've done something really hard and want to be fancy and pretentious. It nailed it. It was like right on the money. It's exactly what I wanted.
Great. But you tend to not enjoy peaty, smoky whiskey, correct?
My palate has changed a lot thanks to you and thanks to my dad, who is an enjoyer of Scotch, and to Corey Mansky, my former bandmate and bestie. So I have become to enjoy Scotch more than I once did.
Okay, but we're saying Scotch, but there are 5 different regions of Scotland, and smoky peaty is characteristic of Islay region, but you're saying you've come to appreciate Scotch. Are you saying Islay smoky peaty Scotches?
Most of the Scotch I have bought and consumed is Islay, single malt from Islay.
Really?
So I think that's if I'm going to drink Scotch, I lean there because that's the Scotchiest Scotch. And my brother-in-law, Pete, is a whiskey connoisseur, so he's introduced me to many different kinds of. He and Corey and my dad they're all like Islay guys, single malt Islay. The more GHs in the title of the brewery, the distillery, the better. So
it sounds like a good group of dudes to have teaching you about this stuff. So anyway, this is my experience. Jeffrey, what is your beverage?
I had trouble with this one, and I didn't want to go out and find like Titan Ale or something. I wanted to go deeper than that. So the only thing I can really remember people drinking other than fighting over Dixie cups of water was when Dr. Day comes to try to recruit Boone to become the head coach. They're sitting on the porch and there's a big pitcher of tea. And I thought, this takes place in the South, right? Sweet tea is kind of a hospitality drink. So I started looking for what I could do with sweet tea. My other mandate is that I have so much booze in my house, just from the years of people coming over and buying stuff, that I really wanted to try and use something I had in my house.
Okay.
So I found a recipe. I have no idea how this is going to taste. I found a recipe for a bourbon sweet tea.
Ooh.
I did not have bourbon, and I did not have iced tea, but I did have limoncello.
You're like Amanda Plummer in
I don't have
So
those
Married
other
an
things.
Axe Murderer.
Exactly right.
We didn't have those.
We didn't have those other things. So I did have limoncello. So I'm like, okay, I have limoncello, which is a lemon liqueur. When my wife and I went to London years ago, we bought some Fortnum & Mason's tea. And in honor of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, I was like, I'm going to use some British tea. Okay. I had a bottle of Seagram's Canadian whiskey, which I used instead of bourbon. So I have Commonwealth of Britain whiskey. I have English tea, and I have limoncello. I did not have any lemons, but we have a calamansi tree in our backyard, which is like Filipino citrus. So I have here a cocktail, 4 ounces of black tea, half an ounce of limoncello, and 1.5 ounces of Seagram's 7 Canadian whiskey.
Okay.
You can't see the calamansi is now sunk into the thing. So it looks like iced tea.
It does.
Here we go.
Bottoms up.
It needs more limoncello and more whiskey. Other than that, it's pretty tasty. It's very refreshing. It tastes like, I think I should have brewed the tea a little stronger. It's a little weak on the tea side of the tea.
Okay.
The limoncello is very nice. Adds like a lemon, like the lemon you'd put in tea.
But also a high alcohol liqueur.
It's going down very cool, but it's warming my belly.
Huh?
I think bourbon would have been a better choice. I mean, I know why they called for bourbon, because the Canadian whiskey sort of disappears. It doesn't have that, that bourbon edge.
Okay.
I think even rye might offset it nicely. But this is very refreshing.
That would be a completely different flavor.
Yeah, well, maybe if you put a little cinnamon in it, a little rye and a little cinnamon, or even I know, it's really good. It's
what
very
is the
refreshing.
name of this beverage?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I have named it Strong Side Sweet Tea.
Got it. Yep. Good.
That's good. That's very refreshing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, whatever beverage you have chosen, even if it's just a cool glass of water, hope you enjoy. Cheers to your health, to shelter from the storm, sometimes to the storm itself.
It's time for Act 3, which begins with The Road Back. The hero is pursued by vengeful forces he disturbed when he sees the object of his quest. All this victory and attention and racial unity has lots of consequences for the team and the coaches. These consequences are the vengeful forces. At the dinner event you were mentioning, Coach Yost is announced as one of the Hall of Fame nominees. It's been hinted at that this was going to be his year, and now he's been nominated. After the dinner, the executive director of sports organization company form tells him that they're going to edge Boone out so that Yost can be head coach again. The look on Will Patton's face, such a great actor, that performance, because you see the hunger for the Hall of Fame and to have his team back, but you see the conflict of his integrity, and also maybe there's some loyalty now that he's got to Boone, and he's just absolutely torn. The Northern Virginia Regional Championship game approaches. On TV, the super racist coach of the opposing team introduces his All-American tackles as prize bulls who don't do nothing but knock the chocolate out of folks. And then he calls Boone a monkey.
Yes.
On television.
Yes.
The regional championship game starts, and the refs are making horrible calls against the Titans. Yost sees what's happening. He knows this game is being called, and he's simmering. He's got too much integrity to let this stand. One more crappy call, and Cheryl is in the stands absolutely losing her mind at the refs. And Yost looks up at her, and then he spots the executive director of sports organization in the crowd, and that clinches it. He's had enough. He walks up to the ref, who he knows by name, Titus, and says,
"You call this game fair, or I'll go to the papers. I don't care if I go down with you. But before God, I swear I'll see every last one of you thrown in jail."
Now, Yost is a religious man. We've heard him invoke sin before when he was accusing Boone of the sin of pride. And this is him expressing what to a religious person is the ultimate commitment, which is humility before God. I will sacrifice. If I have to go to jail, I will do it because this is what's right. So Yost calls in his defense, and he all of a sudden is playing it tough like Boone. He is being aggressive with play. He's being so aggressive that Petey, the guy he nurtured back onto the defense, walks out on him. Yost tells them in this, oh man, Will Patton's his voice, he says, "Blitz all night." And Boone is watching this and kind of like, this guy's stepping up. Like gives him this like appraising look.
I don't want them to gain another yard.
You blitz all night. And if they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out. You make sure that they remember forever the night they played the Titans.
The defense takes the field, and the tide starts to turn. Julius sacks the quarterback, and as he's on the ground, he says, "You better make yourself comfortable down there." Real comfortable. And then, so this part I didn't really understand. In a very dramatic, cinematic moment, Bertier walks up to the mean racist coach and points at him.
Yeah.
Like points at his face, and they have this dramatic face-off like something from an old Western.
Yeah. What didn't you get about that?
What is he?
He's calling him out.
For being a racist, or for
he's calling him out for everything. For we know you're cheating. We're taking you down. This is the end of your season.
Huh. It came off weird to me, like maybe there was lines of dialogue that were cut or something. And watching it again, I was like, it just felt a little melodramatic. But anyway,
it is. But
it's great. It's a great moment because again, Bertier is drawing the line of team versus bad guy, not black versus white. He's all about the team.
My note here about the resulting Montague of the rest of the game, of the defense pummeling their opponents so badly that number 6 spends half the time as number 9.
Well done. Well done.
That poor stunt player gets hit so hard so many times. He does so many backflips and somersaults in the air and hits the ground like a truck.
I love football Foley. I wish I could be in the Foley room while they're slamming together. So when the offense takes the field, Yost says, "Run it up, Herman. Leave no doubt." He uses that phrase twice when he's talking to the team. Leave no doubt.
Yes.
And Boone looks over at him and gives him an almost smile. Now we have a series of positive consequences. So they've borne some negative consequences, but now we see some positive consequences. They win the game, but the price is high. The executive director tells Yost, "You just lost the Hall of Fame." The team bus pulls up at TC Williams, and the team, they're returning heroes. Bertier wants Julius to come out with him. "Come on, you come out." And Julius is like, "I got to stay with my girl, man. I got to stay." And Gary's like, "Okay, got it." And Emma sees Gary and comes up to him and says, "It looks like you weren't the one with the mixed up priorities." And she says she's going to try not to be such a racist. And she promises to be there when they play Marshall for the title.
But important to note that they're not dating again. She says, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But
I'll
be there to support you. Yeah, I'm a little bit racist.
Yost comforts Cheryl over the loss of the Hall of Fame. She's taken it hard. She's like, "I really wanted it."
I really want it.
And then she says, "Wouldn't want it anyway, bunch of old rednecks." And she says he just loves Cheryl. Whatever her dad wants, she wants. She's like there for her dad. Boone gets home after the game, and his family welcomes him. He's celebrating with his family in the driveway in the street, and all of a sudden, his formerly unwelcoming neighbors give him a standing ovation. That's a huge turnaround.
Yes.
But then Gary is cruising Main Street, and he's so caught up in his victory that he's distracted as he drives into an intersection, and he gets T-boned. Julius arrives at the hospital and learns that Gary is now paralyzed from the waist down. And he goes up to Gary's mom and is telling her, I'm so sorry. And Mrs. Bertier tells Julius to be strong. Your tears aren't going to help my son walk again. So he goes into Gary's room. The only one that Gary wants to see is Julius. And the nurse says, only kin's allowed in here. And Gary says,
Alice, are you blind? Don't you see the family resemblance? That's my brother.
And this relationship in this movie, Gary and Julius, is so powerful. And I get it that it's a Hollywood cliche, but it's based on a true story. And these two people in real life stayed friends for the rest of their lives. So this is actually a transformation where two people are pulled away from their prejudice to unite. Gary tells Julius, he admits he was afraid of him. I was afraid of you, Julius, but I realized I was only hating my brother. And Julius says, we're going to move into the same neighborhood. We're going to get old and fat together. And Jerry cries, and I'm crying. When you're a young person and you're fantasizing about your older life with someone, that's a profound moment of growing up when you start seeing the future. And so this is really a moment of boys becoming men.
Mm-hmm. The future you want, the people you want to share your future with.
Yeah. And then they say left side, strong side, and Gary's crying and I'm crying. And anyway, moving on to the next point. Boone calls a press conference and Yost challenges him. Boone he's shattered by the loss of Gary as a player. He's still infuriated about the brick coming through his window, and he's on a mission. And Yost challenges him, is this even about football anymore, or is this about you? And it's a legitimate challenge. That's a question that Boone has to answer. And he goes home, and that's when he has his moment of doubt with his wife. Did I push them too far? And his wife said, he had an accident. It was an accident. You're not responsible for that. And talks some sense into him.
Whatever kind of ambition it took to do what you did around here. This world could use a lot more of it, Herman.
You know, the truth is, in real life, the people who make big changes, drive social change, they tend to have big egos. They have to raise the courage to do things like this. And this movie is honest in a lot of ways because it shows the cost that ego has, really. And if really you want to step into that leadership role of being community instead of being person, you have to confront this doubt. And this moment is crucial. If it weren't for this moment, this movie would be too Hollywood for me. And I wish there'd been maybe a couple more moments like that. But Denzel puts them in his performance during the games. So to me, it's all good. Okay, so the last moment I had is the team. I can't.
Pull it together, Jeff. Your tears aren't going to help Gary walk again.
The team goes to visit Gary in the hospital, and Yost is trying to tell him, oh, don't worry about the game. Now's the time for reflection and prayer. And Gary says, Coach, I'm hurt. I'm not dead. And he says, I've been reading up on activities they have for people in wheelchairs. They've got Olympics.
Yep.
This kid, in the space of, I don't know how long, a week, got his legs taken away from him. And he's like, yeah, but they got Olympics. And spoiler alert, he went on in real life to win a gold medal for shot put at the Olympics.
Yes.
So, damn, that's an athlete. That's someone who's committed.
Driven to excel constantly.
That's the end of the road back.
This brings us to the resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in a final battle or showdown. We cut now to the state championship game versus Marshall.
I'm still emotional over Gary and the Olympics. I'm not ready for the state championship game. Can we need a break or a drink segment or something? I can't handle this movie.
Drink your sweet tea. As the team leaves the locker room, Louis informs Coach Boone that he is eligible. And at first we don't understand what that means, but he says, I achieved a C+ grade average. I'm going to college. This guy who was just on the football team for something to do and who was failing his classes and who said, I am never going to earn a C average. I am no good, down home, white trash, and I always will be. He did it.
Yeah, he did.
As they take the field, Petey apologizes to Yost for walking off last game, and he asks to play.
You abandoned your team in their moment of need, Petey. Sorry won't make up for that.
Yeah, I know, but listen, I won't play for you. I won't play for the championship.
You can play for me next year. You sit on that bench. Show me you can support your teammates. You'll start again as a senior.
That's a tough moment.
Yeah.
You want to give him the opportunity, but you also don't want to reward him for failing his teammates. It's not that he made a bad play. He walked off the field.
I've never been in sports. Like, I'm a fan of sports, but I've never been a part of a team in that way. But as a parent, I've faced those choices where I want to give the kid that opportunity, but I have to let them suffer the consequences of their choice. It's so hard. And he knows if I let Petey play, he'll be a worse player for it. But if I make him sit out, if he really wants it, next year he'll be faithful.
Right.
Oh, I love that scene.
We now cut to the stands as Gary's mother arrives, and slowly, as people begin to realize who she is, they begin to stand and applaud. Emma approaches Julius and shakes his hand, making up for the disrespect on the first day of school.
She wins at not being racist now.
And yep.
She has shown us how to win racism.
And she has fulfilled her promise to Gary to be there at the last game to support the team.
Yeah.
So at the half, the Titans are down 7-0. Cheryl approaches Dad Yost.
Coach!
Sweetheart, you better get back to your seat.
I can't, Coach.
What?
Ed Henry's got Boone's number, sure as shooting. You ain't doing nothing against that shotgun. Look, Coach, now ain't the time to be proud.
Boone's halftime speech is subdued.
Yeah.
It's not about winning. He says, win or lose, we're going to walk out the stadium tonight with our heads held high, and that's all anybody can ask for. Julius, in the absence of Gary now, steps up into a team leader role, and he says, that's not good enough.
You demanded more of us. You demanded perfection. Now, I ain't saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. And I ain't gonna never be. None of us are. But we have won every single game we have played till now. So this team is perfect. We stepped out on that field that way tonight. And if it's all the same to you, Coach Boone, that's how we want to leave it.
Julius is the one who rises to the occasion in this moment, who resurrects Gary and his team leadership.
Yeah.
Yost then joins the meeting, and he asks Boone for help running the defense. Yost is now setting his pride aside, humbling himself, and asking for assistance. Cue the 70s rock music. Alan goes up to Yost and says, I can't play this guy, the guy that's on the opposite field. He's going to beat me every time. Put Petey in. He's better. And Yost says, you give him the slot if you want him to have it.
And I saw that as an echo of Boone telling Gary that if he wanted Ray out, he had to go fire him. So it's like Yost picking up on the whole empower your player thing.
Yeah, good point. So in the second half, the Titans establish momentum. Across the field, the opposing coach, Ed Henry, looks worried. And in the final minute, down 7-3, the announcer is saying all Marshall has to do is hold on to the ball, and they win the championship. The Titans force a fumble. Petey recovers the ball. Titans have enough time on the clock to run one play. Boone may be taking a little inspiration from the trick plays that Yost tried to feed him at camp.
Yeah.
He says,
fake 23 blast with a backside George reverse. You got that? Fake 23 blast with a backside George reverse like your life depended upon it. Let's go. Let's go.
Well, remember, it's Yost that's urging Boone. He's like, the team's reading your offense. You got to do something to change it up. Yost is poking him here, yeah.
So Boone puts in Rev. Remember, Rev's got a broken wrist.
I thought he was injured. I guess not. Why are they bringing in a QB?
Why are they putting a QB in?
Why are they putting two quarterbacks in? And they're like, they're going to throw a deep pass.
Yep.
Ed Henry is screaming at his players, deep pass, cover deep, cover deep.
Cover deep! Watch the deep pass, cover deep!
It's not a deep pass. They do a reverse. Rev gets the ball. Sunshine doing that thing that he does. Gets some monster blocks on a couple of the defenders. Opens the path. Rev runs all the way down into the end zone. Game-winning touchdown. The crowd goes wild. The music swells. This is one moment that I wish there had been more. What we are shown is very close up, medium shots, I'll say, of the players while they're doing this action. I wanted to see, pull out, give us a wide shot. Show what, like they do when you're watching an actual NFL game. Pull out and let's see the defenders that are in the way. I felt like there was something lacking during that final play.
Well, my impression was that it's that handoff shuttle pass, run the other way. He found open field. A couple guys chased him. That's it. That's one of those plays you see when if you fool the defense, it's yours.
Well, then show it to me. Pull back. Show me the field. Let me see that the Titans' play completely flummoxed the Marshall defense. Show me that there are only 2 defenders in the way. We know that the Titans have 75 yards to go for this final play, but show it to me. Show me that 75 yards with only 2 defenders in the way. That to me is more exciting than having the camera in the front pointed at the runner as the runner comes at us. I want to see what's ahead of the runner. Okay, anyway, off my soapbox. I think in a great moment, Ed Henry jogs across the field and he's the one who initiates the handshake. And he says, "Congratulations, coach."
He's not a racist coach. He's a good coach, yeah.
He respects the job that Coach Boone did with his team. And we are told about Ed Henry halfway through the movie. He's the super coach. He's like the one that you fear to face because he's going to beat you.
He's the Bill Belichick, only not a cheating liar.
We're told by the stadium announcer at the beginning of the game that Ed Henry has coached his teams to 250 victories during his 30-year career. Yeah. This is what this man does.
Yeah.
He is an expert in his field. So it's a big moment when he congratulates Coach Boone. Coach Boone and Yost have a moment.
I know football. What you did with those boys. You were the right man for the job, Coach.
Your Hall of Fame in my book.
I looked, and maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I didn't see anything that said Yost ever made the Hall of Fame. And I'm wondering if that was something that they manufactured for the film, or if that was that a real element to this story, the true story?
It's, Boone, he doesn't hand out compliments. And so when he says that, I think it's an acknowledgement.
Good point.
For Boone to say, "You're one of the best ever," which is what it means to say you're Hall of Fame, that's a profound compliment from that guy.
It's also an acknowledgement of what Yost sacrificed.
Absolutely.
You chose the team over your personal ambition.
Yeah.
And we are state champions as a result.
Well, that leads us to return with the elixir or freedom to live. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. We return to the cemetery and to adult Cheryl's voiceover as she wraps up the story. Titans had a perfect season, won the state champs, made it to first runner-up for the national championships, the second best high school team in the country. Now, all this that's about to happen is real, what actually happened to the real people in the real story. Gary, coached by Yost, went on to win the gold medal for shot put at the Wheelchair Olympics. And then 10 years later, he died. And we realize now that's the funeral.
Right.
And Cheryl says, "People say that it can't work black and white, but here we make it work every day. We have our disagreements, but before we reach for hate," I can't. Before we reach for hate, always, we remember the Titans.
We have a title.
If you're going to drop the title in dialogue, if you're going to drop the title of a movie in voiceover, that takes big balls. Like, You're saying my movie is so good that I can drop the title at you while a character is talking at you and you'll still get emotional. And they do it and it works. And it's, oh. So then Gary's teammates sing, na, 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 na.
Uh-huh.
Na, 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 na.
We're about to get a copyright strike if you continue that.
Goodbye. And it's an echo to another time, but this time it's harmonized in a minor key, just subtly with the score underneath it.
Yeah.
And we can tell years have passed because Julius and Petey have mustaches.
Right.
Which means that they're all older.
Older, yep.
Roll the credits, and we get a classic true story credits trope.
Yep.
The update on all the real people portrayed in the film. Boone coached the Titans for 5 more years, then retired in Alexandria. He stayed in that town.
Right.
Yost worked as his assistant coach for 4 more years, didn't retire from coaching until 1990, almost 20 years later. Boone and Yost remained friends the rest of their lives. Gary was a 2-time All-American and became a leader and an inspiration to the handicapped community in Virginia. Then he died in a car crash with a drunk driver in 1981, and they renamed the gym at T.C. Williams High School after him. More about T.C. Williams in the tidbits. Julius was a 1971 All-American, went on to work for the city, and they stayed friends until Gary's death.
Yep.
I can't.
Cheryl You're almost kept helping. There. Bring us home, Jeffrey. Bring us home.
Cheryl kept helping her dad. Sunshine, Ronnie Bass, became the starting QB at U of South Carolina and then went on to work for ABC Sports. Petey went on to work for the Alexandria school system. Rev retired and worked for U.S. Air. And Louis played 4 years at college.
Yeah.
And became a successful businessman in Tennessee. Yes!
If you don't walk out of that theater feeling lifted, even though the movie ends at a funeral.
What's the matter with you?
Soothe that black heart of yours. Even while I was doing my analysis here, you watch the movie, you do a rough draft of the analysis. I watched it again, made a whole bunch of changes to my analysis. And then you go through and you pick and choose little scenes here. And then every time I'd get one of the, go back to a scene and I watch 2 minutes of it and I'm like,
I can't. I cried more watching it for the second time for the second round of analysis than I did watching it. And I hadn't seen this film until a couple months ago. Actually a year ago when my son started playing football. I'm like, well, we got to watch some football movies. And I was sitting there on the couch with my son and daughter. I'm like trying to hide tears. I'm sniffling. And because my son's into it for the football, and I'm like, they changed each other. They changed the racial in 1971. And I watched it 2 more times, and it didn't get easier. It didn't get easier.
No, it never does, Jeff. It never does. That means you got empathy.
Or I have an emotional issue.
We are soft-hearted. Ooh, man, this peat monster. I haven't finished. I've still got some. I've been nursing it.
My tea is gone, and it was stronger than I thought.
Oh, you didn't mix it well enough, perhaps. If all the beast was at the bottom.
It's really good.
Well, Jeff, we ran a successful Fake 23 blast with a George reverse like our life depended on it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and are interested in and able to support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/heroesjourneypodcast and see if one of the tiers appeals to you.
And if you would like to know what I'm supposed to say next, give Dan a message on Patreon and let him know he should email me the outro script so that we can record this part.
Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.
Thank you to all patrons who make this show possible, including our brand new patron, Rory Coles. Thank you, Rory. And
Rory,
welcome.
We're putting you in at left tackle.
We'd also like to thank all of our demigod patrons, John Peterson Jr., Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, Salafiel Jones, Jasmine and Pete Hudson, Mike and Susie Zarzana, Randy Sparks, and Justin Purvis.
Special thanks to Taylor Jordan for composing the Hero's Journey theme, and Jason Dorff for our episode artwork. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page of our website, heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Remember the Titans.
We're not going to be able to hear that over the music.
How do you do that? Remember the Titans.
Titans.
Is copyright 2000 Disney Enterprises, Inc. and Jerry Bruckheimer, Inc. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.
Journey on.